The Pearl Harbor John Doe, identified as Claude Ralph Garcia. Claude Garcia was a United States Navy sailor who was on the USS West Virginia when Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. I've not been covering the DNA war identifications that have been happening as of late, but the truth is that Othram has identified quite a few of these brave men who fought for our country, and I wanted to take a moment to thank this man and his family for the sacrifice that they made for our country. The attack on Pearl Harbor took the lives of 2,403 people. Most of them were U.S. personnel, but of those, 68 were civilians. Each life lost has a ripple effect on their own family members, changing the course of the lives of so many thousand people, beyond just those specific lives cut short. People that without this would have had kids and lived happy lives. But the truth is, it's an important part of our history, and without people being willing to stand up and protect our country, and the same with everyone in all the other countries, we would all just be at the mercy of invading forces. On that day, at 7:48 a.m. on December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Force conducted a surprise military strike against the United States at the naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This was an unprecedented attack, and it would serve as the beginning of the U.S.'s involvement in World War II. The USS West Virginia, where Claude was located, was hit with torpedoes, but thanks to the crew's counter-flooding measures, the ship came to a final rest on the shallow harbor floor, and it did not capsize. Overall, 106 men and women, including Claude, were on the U.S. West Virginia. It was that surprise attack that led U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to declare on December 7, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. The following day, the U.S. Congress declared war on Japan, which led to the United States' formal entry into World War II. Claude would eventually be awarded the Purple Heart, and his name was featured in Court 3 of the Courts of the Missing of the Honolulu Memorial in Hawaii. Between December 8, 1941 and November 24, 1942, Navy personnel recovered his remains and that of other U.S. West Virginia personnel. I'd love to know what people think. In a case like this, we knew his remains were there and that he perished. Is it invasive to continue picking apart remains and testing them to try to offer burial under their name and put a final period in the story of the lives of Claude and those like him? Or is it more respectful, after 81 years, to just let him rest? After all, those who knew Claude are gone too. No matter what anyone feels about war, men and women before them and again long after them made a choice to serve their country, and they definitely deserve respect, although I suppose how one offers that respect is debatable. In September 1947, the American Graves Registration Service was tasked with identifying members from the Pacific. They managed to identify many of those men and women back then, but in this case there were still 25 USS West Virginia personnel that had gone unaccounted for, and they did know that Claude was one of them. Sadly, at the time, they had to rule that Claude and the rest of the men that were with him were unidentifiable and unrecoverable. As a result, they buried 38 sets of possible remains in 35 plots at the National Memorial Cemetery. Because there were more remains than people left unidentified on the ship, it was made even more confusing. It's believed that perhaps some of the men found actually came from other ships. And in a case like that, maybe it does make sense to keep digging and try to identify all that were left in those graves. In 2017, the Defense of Prisoners of War, or Men Missing in Action, accounting agency began the USS West Virginia project, which led to exhuming those 38 sets of remains, and they are still working on them. Claude Ralph Garcia is the first resident of Ventura, California, killed in this war. He went unidentified for nearly 81 years. His identification was announced on July 20th, 2022. Claude was just 25 when his life was taken. The Lost Creek John Doe, identified as Gregory Woodford. Gregory disappeared in the middle of June 2019, and there isn't a lot about him that's been released, but he was just 30 years old when he disappeared. He was a U.S. Navy veteran who had been living in Colorado Springs. A man was found a year later in June of 2020. He was in the Lost Creek Wilderness area off a trail in Lake George, Colorado. His cause of death wasn't released, but it's mentioned in some of the press releases that he took his own life. And there is a note that a 12-gauge shotgun was found with him, along with hiking poles, a backpack, and some other items, but no ID. They couldn't do a dental identification because of damage to his skull. The authorities had a hard time identifying him, and it was further complicated by the fact that he wasn't reported missing. It appears that Gregory originally came from Roanoke, Virginia, but he'd been living in Colorado, which probably further complicated things. It would take DNA to identify Gregory Woodford. His mother wrote a letter to those who fought hard to identify the son she loved, and it was read at the press conference saying, Greg, who is also named Mario when he served in the Navy, was an extraordinary son and human being. He was also such an intelligent, caring, kind, generous, selfless man. Greg was drawn to Colorado due to his exquisite beauty and his inherent love for nature and animals, especially dogs, and his deep passion for the wolf sanctuary. Greg was dearly loved by many people whose lives he touched, and he will forever be missed. Words cannot sufficiently express my gratitude and appreciation, especially to Dave, who is the coroner, and also to the genealogist and anyone involved in all the time and effort and resources used to identify my son. You have my deepest, heartfelt thanks for not giving up. Thank you so much. After reading the letter to media members at a June 13th press conference in Fairplay, Colorado, the coroner paused before stating, This is the reason I do this, and this is why it's so important to obtain positive identification in these types of situations. Gregory Allen Woodford was missing from his family for 3 years. He went unidentified as a doe for 2. Riverside Jane Doe, 1991. Identified as Kathryn Coffey. It appears no recreation was ever done in this case. We know she was found in the open desert in the thermal area of the Coachella Valley in 1991, near a freeway ramp. They estimated she'd been there for quite a while. All they ever really reported was that foul play was suspected and that she had a small frame. They also knew she had reddish-brown hair with some gray. It's just too little to go on. And not to mention, without a recreation, the odds of identifying her were even smaller. It's also unsettling how many times I've had to mention freeways and on and off ramps here. Thankfully, DNA Solves, which is part of Othram Labs, partnered with the district attorney's office to use genome sequencing and solve this case. They found genetic relatives through forensic genealogy, leading to Kathryn's sister, eventually giving her name back on August 23, 2022. We now know that Kathryn was born in 1954, and she was last seen between 1989 and 1990. This means her age was 36 to 37 at the time. They believe she was living in Baldwin Park, California, but she was last sighted in the Indio area of California. While Baldwin Park is farther away from where she was found, the place she was last seen isn't. Indio and the Thermal Valley aren't very far away at all. Thermal Valley is an unincorporated area that is part of the Coachella Valley. Kathryn graduated from Scripps College in the mid-1970s with a degree in English literature. It appears she wasn't in close contact with her family at the time, and that's likely why she wasn't reported missing. That's also why it's so important for anyone who knows what she was up to at the time to come forward. I've provided the phone number for Valley Crime Stoppers. You can leave a tip without ever giving your name. They just need to have a lead to allow them to focus on to begin to get a picture of what might have happened to Kathryn. Kathryn Coffey went unidentified for 31 years. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. If you could help to get the channel noticed by the YouTube algorithm by liking and leaving a comment, even if you can just leave a thumbs up or some emoji, it counts as engagement. It would be so appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Thanks everyone. Take care of yourselves and each other.